So what will they cost? What is the real price, in quotes, for giving free secondary education in Ghana? Recently, at a rally at the Manchagbona, that's in Jamestown, Nana Akufo-Addo touched on this subject again, and also on the BBC, as I've said, he indicated that. For those of you who missed those or who like to be reminded, watch these inserts. We'll be back to discuss the issue, and then I'll introduce my guest to you. Watch this.
I'm a school I'm Ghana for Makato, Mekebio, Nyakupo Yamadom na Ghana Francano, Ebediminsa. Secondary school education in our country is going to be free for all the people of Ghana. We are not going to allow education to be a privilege only for the rich. Education is a right for every citizen of this country to be able to improve themselves and get an opportunity to go forward in life.
The costing is being done. I mean, very, very soon we will be in a position.
You can't make a promise like that.
No. Very soon we're going to be putting it out.
You don't know how much.
I do know, but I prefer to tell the Ghanaian people directly before I tell you.
Many of them can't talk. You can tell me, and
it doesn't matter. I would prefer to make that statement to the people of Ghana directly first, as to the cost. And any
so you do know the cost.
Oh, we do, and we have a very good idea how also we're going to finance it.
Well, you don't have to. You're obviously not going to give me the figures, but just tell me how you're going to pay for it. Because it's clearly going to be a very great cost. You've got to train the teachers. You've got to build new schools.
All of that has been adequately costed, and we believe that first of all, the new revenues will help, more efficient management of what we have now, growth in the Ghanaian economy. These are the three sources which are going to enable us to fulfill that promise. And it's a promise that has been solemnly made to the Ghanaian people, and is going to be solemnly kept, not because it's a campaign promise, but because it is a necessity for the future of our country, to educate all our young people, and not to acquiesce in a situation whereby only segments of the community that have some money are able to educate their children.
It's an interesting
point.
It's
a major issue of human capital development.
Indeed.
And if we do not make the effort to achieve that, the development paradigm that we want to achieve is going to be very difficult for us to do.
Let me quote you.
We're talking about the statistics about our educational system, which is proving to be serious crisis. The young men and women of our country who are going to school, by the time they enter secondary school, what we call the senior high school, already over 50% of them find themselves out on the streets without any serious educational background, without any serious skills, largely because of the failure of the system to accommodate and provide opportunity for all of them. That is a major issue for the future of our country.
All right, so we've laid good foundation for tonight's show. Just reminded you of what Nana Akufo-Addo said at Jamestown a few weeks ago, and also what he said last week or so on the BBC Hard Talk program. In the studio, Franklin Kujo, Executive Director, Imani Ghana, is here with us. Thank you for coming, Franklin. From the far end of the table, Kofi Asare is Executive Director, Action for Rural Education. Kofi, it's good to have you on the show. Mr. Boachi Ejako is NPP Campaign Manager 2012. He's on the telephone lines with us. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for joining us. Logically, I believe my first question to you should be, what would it cost to make secondary education free should the NPP win the elections in 2012?
I think that is not the starting point for such a crucial and fundamental issue. The issue we have settled in our mind is that the children of this country are entitled to a good quality education. And we as parents, we as a nation, have a responsibility to deliver that quality education to our children. So it's not a matter of what will it cost. Look, as a parent, when my children started to got to the school-going age, I did not sit and calculate how much it was going to cost to decide whether to send them to school or not. For me, it was an absolute necessity, and as a parent, I was going to do whatever it cost to send them to school. Let me give you my personal, very intimate experience. I come from a poor background. A mother, a school teacher in Asante New Town, Kumasi, enrolled her children in KO Methodists. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't have come out well. But thanks be to God, I had the mother who was absolutely committed to the education of her children. And God bless her, she did everything within her power to make sure that we got such an education, all 5 of us. Look, I remember as a child, my mother, a school teacher, we would take her school uniform to school ahead of her. 6 o'clock, she's in Kumasi Central Market, hustling to get something for her children. After school, we would send her her uniform back home. She would go to the market and hustle again till 6:30.
Mr. Jacko, how does that answer the question?
It's going to answer the question, if you bear with me. We must establish necessity and need. For us, it's not the question of cost. It's the question of must, necessity. I mean, are we going to trifle with the education of our children because of some cost? We are saying that we are unshakable in our commitment to the young people of this country, and whatever it's going to cost to educate such children, we are going to do it. So for us, it is not whether it is 500 million, 600 million, or even $1 billion. What matters is that as a society, we have to commit ourselves to a purpose, a big, grand purpose. That is the issue. It's not so we don't start our calculation or we don't start our conceptualization from what it's going to cost us.
Well, clearly on the BBC interview, we've just played it back for our viewers. That question was put to Nana Akufo-Addo. He says he said that at some point that he knows what the cost is and that he preferred to tell the Ghanaian people first before he told Mr. Saka, who was really doing the interview.
Well, that tells you that.
Permit me to finish my question, sir. Let me finish my question, sir. Thank you. And that he was going to say the cost to the Ghanaian people first. At this stage, the electorate, the Ghanaian people, have been asking the questions I believe you've been following. And the question for them is also largely about what it will cost to do this. Are you saying that you will not address that issue because for you it's a non-issue? Is that your point?
No, don't put, you're a good journalist, don't put words in my mouth.
I haven't. I asked you a question. I said, are you saying that it's a question?
You've asked the question, give me the chance to answer.
I'm not putting words in your mouth, sir.
Addo was right in saying that he was not going to answer the question to Steve Saka. He was right in doing that. And you are saying that the Ghanaian people are demanding of Addo. It's not the Ghanaian people wholly demanding of Addo. Imani put out a question, right? You, gentlemen of the press, should not always behave as if that they represent the totality of the Ghanaian people. We as a party are saying that we are going to launch our manifesto very soon. And when we do, we will tell the good people of this country the details of what is in our manifesto, including how we are going to provide for free high school education. So we have our program. When we launch our manifesto, which is coming very soon, we will provide those answers. We will not be stampeded because somebody says so or somebody imagines otherwise.
Basically, the point about people asking is not about Imani, because I'm sure that you and I and viewers at home have been listening to the text messages that come in, have been following the tweets, the Facebook messages. We will be getting some on this show tonight. I'm sure they started coming in already. And that forms the source of the view about Ghanaians asking questions. It has nothing at all to do with what you're saying.
I hope you remember
about
that
Imani.
This commitment was made to the Ghanaian people in 2008. I hope you remember that.
Absolutely.
Yes. We made that commitment in 2008. Nobody asked any questions.
It doesn't mean we can ask now.
No, that's not the point.
What's the point?
The point is that it was after hard talk. Even after hard talk, people didn't. The issue started with the Imani position in the newspaper. I'm not questioning whether Imani has a right to ask or not. But what I'm saying is that there is a rhythm, a rhyme and reason and rhythm for everything all of us do. We have made a commitment to the Ghanaian people. And we are saying that, look, it is not about numbers. However, when we launch our manifesto, that is when we will tell Ghanaians the details of what we have in our manifesto, including senior high school education. I don't think that that is wrong. I don't think that there's anything strange about it. It's a policy, major policy issue for us. And where the essence of launching our manifesto is to make sure that we have a timely and choreographed place and time of releasing all that type of information. We will, when that time comes.
So is it correct in making a story about our interview that we are having now for a reporter to say that in answering the question about cost, Mr. Jako's answer was that it will be told Ghanaians when the manifesto is published?
No, the answer is that the issue is not about cost. Principally, our issue is an irrevocable commitment to the young people of this country that whatever it is, we have a covenant with them to provide them with free senior high school education. That is the answer. That is the issue.
Okay, that is an issue according to you.
Does it matter to you whether we say it's $1 billion today and when we get into government it is 600 million? Does it matter to you?
It is not what matters to me. It's what matters to my viewer, which is important to me. So really, it's not about me.
The question is, what is the salience of the two issues? Which is salient? I believe what is salient for the Ghanaian people to know is that we are irrevocably committed to providing free senior high school education to all the children of Ghana because they are deserving. And if we are supposed to modernize and transform this economy, that is the step we want to go. Look, people talk about we started life with South Korea, we started with Taiwan, we started with this. Yes, you could have started with them, but they have invested heavily in the human capital of their country. That is why they are where we are. And if we need to catch up, we better make that commitment to make sure that all our children are getting quality education. Now, if they're supposed to get that, it can't be about money. Because if we make it money, then it is only the children of rich people who are going to be able to have quality education. Already we are seeing that in this country. Look at the university enrollment and look at the schools that are giving the inputs to university enrollment. It is largely the schools, the private schools where rich people's children attend. When I went to Mfansim School, children from Mpechireche, Mentukwa, Tigamgam, they all passed and qualified to come to Mfansim School.
On the contrary,
were able to get into university.
On the contrary,
that is no longer the case.
On the contrary, the point you make about if we say it's all about money, only rich children will go, I think that's not the point. The point is that the poor man wants to go. He knows that it is at a certain cost. And what is the cost? I think that's the issue about the cost. If you think that is not the issue, that's a different matter.
The poor man,
but it doesn't mean that the poor man won't go to school if you tell us how much it will cost. Let's move on.
The issue.
Let's move on.
What we are saying is that whether it costs $1 billion,
yes,
whether it costs 500 million, for us it is not the issue.
Let's move on.
The issue is that we as a party are prepared to bear the costs of making sure that all our children get a quality education.
How do you hope to source funds to bear the cost?
How did we find 627 million to pay dubious and bogus judgment debts? How did we do it?
Is that a question to me?
Every country generates sufficient revenue. No country has sufficient money to do all the things it wants. America will tell you they don't have sufficient money to do all the things they want. We have to prioritize our spending. We have to make sure that the things that are important to us as a people get first priority. It would mean that somewhere along the line, we may have to cut back on certain things that are not necessary. It may mean that we have to rationalize our expenditure. Look, if we are creating bogus payments to other people, other entities, it is taking away from education. If you pay Wyoming 53 million, if you pay CP 93 million, you are taking from education. And all we are saying is that nilly-willy, we will be having an expanded economy. Right now, Get Fund has about a billion cedis in it. Are we waiting to sit around for people to share that money before we realize that we haven't taken care of our children? This economy, a growing economy, can generate sufficient funds to do what we have to do. In any case, it is about prioritizing and spending your money on items that you think are important for the development of your country.
Okay, Mr. Boakye-Jarko, before you go, Mr. Franklin Cudjoe here was disagreeing with your points, that nobody said anything about cost all the way until even after the BBC interview. He's here, please hold on. Franklin, what do you want to say to Mr. Boakye-Jarko, since, as he says, Imani has really brought this up?
Well, thank you very much. I suspected that most Ghanaians were asking the questions, and indeed, and on September 13th, 2008, and then September 28th, 2008, we asked these very questions in 2 articles we titled, "What are their business plans?" So it's been there. For some reason, I can understand why Mr. Jarko probably didn't hear it, because again, the media did not bring it to the fore as we would have expected now. So indeed, it was asked and has been asked before. But I also agree that the BBC interview had sort of made it, you know, more, if you like, central right now. Right. But the substantive issue is that this has been raised before. In fact, if I to add just something little to it, I remember in that very article, we were wondering when Dan Latte said he was going to marshal $840 billion to build the economy. And we said if he did that, that was going to make Ghana the 5th largest economy in the world. And where was the money going to come from? So that's just the story, and I mean the history behind this particular one.
But let me ask you quickly, Franklin, before Mr. Boakye-Jarko goes, because I know he's in a meeting, and I'm grateful to him for really staying on the line with us. Quickly, do you think that when he says that the issue is not about cost, that he's right?
Well, I mean, depending on what you believe in, I think that commitments ought to be matched. I think that once you have a manifesto, there must be behind it some sort of a pro forma invoice. If not at all, you must have the non-financial costing of this as well as the alternative to this. I think it is important that we look at that cost, because the argument that something is a right and so must be made available at all costs. I liken that to water. I mean, if water was a right and it's a fundamental human right, you might as well leave it in the streams for people to go and fetch. But you know, you have to treat it, transport it as well, and that involves some cost. But I can also understand that if the NPP says there's a lot of wastage in the system, which is frankly true. I mean, ghost names alone, according to the Auditor General's report in 2009, was costing us close to $1 billion That's roughly the same amount we receive from donors. So it is possible, but I think that for my final comment before Mr. Jarko probably responds is that, you know, I think the MVP would have done itself a lot of good if, since 2008, because they've had the opportunity of being in government before, and those questions were going to come anyway. I think for me, it's taken a bit longer, but as he rightly puts it, the manifesto is yet to come out, and I'm sure these are questions that are informing certain decisions that will be taken. So I'm sure we'll get the details as we go on.
Kofi, I'll come to you just a minute. But is this correct? Imani Ghana doubts feasibility of Nana Addo's free promise. That was the headline on My Joy Online. Is that the position of Imani?
Well, the feasibility, based upon the initial figures given by Professor Jambafo, which I'm now beginning to believe was a bit probably rushed, because he said 150 million in the first year, peaking at $400 million in the 4 year. And so we use the statistics available. So this is not a matter of subjectivity at all. Okay. It's about the fact. And so we put out the fact and said, well, given what is already there, as the UN statistics tells us, that we spend $215 per SHS student, and the fact that we have 3.2 million averagely qualifying, but only 1.2 million make it. If you therefore say that you are going to make it free, it means SS education picks at, free education picks at a SHS level, which automatically will mean that the 32% net enrollment is likely to increase even in the first year. And already there will be students in school already. So would you take care of those already in the SS2 or 3, assuming, of course, that the MPP's policy of a 4-year system reverts? Okay. I mean, so these are preliminary questions. So these are just preliminary questions, by the way. We wanted to, start the debate, and I think it is important that we did that. Kofi,
quick way, make your point, and then Mr. Bakweja.
I just want to find out from Mr. Boache Ejakon. When he says that, let's wait until the manifesto is launched, for the fine details about the costing and the strategies, that will be, to me, what is most important in the strategies, because the strategy will depend on the cost.
But he says the cost is not an issue.
Sorry, the cost will depend on the strategy.
He says it's not an issue, even though they provide it in the manifesto. No, it is not an issue. Those were his words.
No, we have an education sector that
Are you saying you're disagreeing with him?
Of course. The cost is essential. It's the first most essential factor in every educational policy, to the extent that it has to be cost effective and it has to be responsive. The question I want to ask him is that if we have to wait for the manifesto, fine and fair enough. Now, this is not a new proposal. It came up in 2008. It means that in 2008, the MPP had in mind a strategy and a cost to it, so it's not a new thing that just came up a couple of weeks ago. It's about 3 years old. So what did they have in mind then? Because it's not a new thing. That's the point.
Mr. Boache Jacko, if you can hear me.
I suppose Mr. Asare was the last speaker.
Yeah, he was.
I hope that Mr. Asare understands that what we did for 2008 is a long way away from 2012 and 2013. And that the fact that we did the costing in 2008 does not necessarily mean is a reflection of current reality, which means that whatever we did 2008 has had to go and undergo substantial review and revision. So to say that we did it 2008,
there was no one.
There was no cost.
Mr. Asare wants to make a clarification.
You see.
No, Mr. Jacko, Mr. Asare wants to make a clarification. No, so you move on that point. He's saying you're misquoting him. Mr. Jacko, so please, let's allow him to make his point.
I'm not saying that there was a costing. If there was, perhaps I am not in the know. What I'm asking is that, did you cost the 2008 promise? And what was the strategy of that promise?
Yes, and all I'm saying is that 2008 is a long way away from today, or 2013, when we hope to implement such a policy. And therefore, whatever has been done in 2008 has to undergo substantial review.
Yeah, but
we've had a full dedicated team working on this. You see, when you do these things, you have to be careful, because headline information is what grabs everybody's attention. You put out one number there, and that is all people remember. But I hope Imani and Franklin will agree with me that in a calculation such as this, it involves a lot of scenarios. And therefore, varying scenarios will generate varying cost and benefit. And therefore, before you put out anything, it has to be a detailed amount of information that you put out with the various scenarios and various cost options. We wouldn't do anything that doesn't measure up to that standard, those high standards. So I want everybody to understand that on this matter, once we get to the manifesto, laying out the manifesto, it will be dealt with fully.
Okay.
Secondly,
yes,
You see, Franklin was making a point about, if I recall, about, unfortunately, because I'm focusing on two different things escaping. But the most important thing I wish to assure this nation is that we've made a commitment, a covenant with the young people of this country. In as much as cost is important, it is not the fundamental issue for us. The fundamental issue is that this is what our young people need to have. At the turn of the 19th century, when the United States decided that it was going to implement free high school education, it didn't claim it had all the money. It didn't even know the extent of costs, but there was a fundamental commitment to get it done. We believe that there is sufficient money in our system if wisely and judiciously used to make this possible. We believe that we can grow with a growing economy. We should be able to generate sufficient funds to do all of these things.
Okay.
So I am not worried about whether it costs 600 million or $1 billion.
Okay.
What I am worried about is a nation having the commitment to dream big and do these things for its children. When President Nkrumah was doing the Ghana Education Trust, people thought he was a lunatic. But that trust also built secondary schools all across the country. When MPP was introducing National Health Insurance Scheme, NDC walked out of Parliament that they wouldn't have anything to do with this ludicrous idea. Yet, it has been implemented and it has been very beneficial for the people of this country. Let us dream big.
All right.
Let us make a commitment to our children and let us bear the pain of making sure that our children get an equally good education such as we have had or even better. That is what will make this nation a better place for us and for our children.
Okay, we have to end this interview. I hope you're able to give me quick responses to this. Professor Jambafo, when he spoke and mentioned figures, was he speaking for the MPP? Was this his own view?
Well, he just laid out a scenario. You see, that is what we have to be careful about. This strategy involves various scenarios. What ifs? Look, you are making projections about if you made it free, how many more children will it draw into the system? Those are all projections, and therefore it will call for various scenarios. I believe Professor Jambafo put out a scenario, and that scenario, without being evaluated as a scenario, has become the emblematic of all that our policy stands for.
So was he speaking in his personal capacity, or he was speaking the voice of the party, is my question?
Well, he's a member of the committee that is looking at this thing. So he was speaking for the party.
He was speaking for the party when he put out the figures.
Look, the figure he put out represents a scenario. I haven't read specifically what he said. I have heard it on the news. But what I'm saying is that is why we are being careful not to focus on numbers. Because as I keep on repeating,
Hello? We seem to have lost Mr. Boakye Ejiakon because I really wanted to hear the last of that, really. It's a very important question to me, finally. Was he speaking the voice of the NPP as a party? Was he explaining Nana Akufo-Addo's policy? Or was he speaking for himself? And as he said, he had not read a bit of he hasn't had the full details, he's read it in the newspaper. That in itself, well, I don't know. We are talking about the free SHS, the NPP's promise to us Ghanaians. And somehow we lost Mr. Boakye Ejiakon on the line. I believe we have him back on. Mr. Boakye Ejiakon, can you hear me now?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, sorry about that. The line cut. But basically, I was trying to get a response. You had said that what Professor Jambafo put out was a scenario. You've also said that the issue about cost is not the issue. I was trying to find out from you. I'm quoting your exact words, sir. It is not the issue, are your words on this program this evening?
Yes, it's
absolutely
not the issue.
Absolutely, it's not the issue. So what I'm saying, the question I was asking you was that when Professor Jambafo came out with a scenario, you said that he's a member of the committee and all, and started giving us the scenario, was he speaking the voice and mind of the party, or he was speaking in his personal capacity?
No, he was not speaking in his personal capacity. If you're a member of a committee, it is very difficult to completely dichotomize and say that such compartmentalizations are not real. As a leading member of that committee, he picked one possible scenario and spoke to it. Somehow, everybody has grabbed that one scenario and made it as if that is the entire program. It is not.
So what was the idea behind him coming out with a scenario when really the figures were going to be put out in the manifesto?
Well, somebody, just as you are pressing for me to tell you figures, he's talking to pressmen and knowing what pressmen can do, asked him about possibilities and certainly put out one of these scenarios.
So the pressmen are to blame?
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that in engaging pressmen or in any other discussion, you may put out certain information because that's how the discussion leads on. But that does not mean that is the entirety of the program that we are putting forth.
But you have not mentioned any figure, despite the fact that I've pressed.
Because of the way Professor Jambafo's scenario analysis has been treated, I refuse to mention a figure.
Should he have mentioned figures ahead of the manifesto?
In retrospect, he shouldn't.
He shouldn't.
In retrospect, he shouldn't. But you see, in conversations, in discussions, you volunteer certain information, and it could be taken very differently from what you intend. As I speak to you now, let us say that I tell you there are 5, 6, 7 scenarios, and I give you the costing for one scenario. I bet that tomorrow's newspapers will say that Boache Jackson says senior high school education will cost us.
Because people are interested in the cost. That's the reason they'll pick on it.
Well, no, that's the reason they pick it must clearly spell out that it is one of many possible scenarios and not the entirety of the program. That is the difference. That is the difference.
So, do you think Nana Akufo-Addo will be speaking to the media in Ghana on this matter, or the manifesto will come before his
No, look, why do we put the cart before the horse? Every political party lays out its details in its manifesto. We will launch our manifesto, which will speak to the details of all our programs, including the senior high school program.
Do you have a date?
Those will be scenarios.
Do you have a date for the manifesto?
We'll communicate it to you when we are ready.
Okay, but you agree that on the BBC Hard Talk program, Nana Addo gave us a lot of views that could also be said to belong to the manifesto, cutting across corruption, etc. And he had views on it, what to do, who should vote, age issues, and all of that. Those are things he could have easily said. We should wait for the manifesto to come for us to know, but he answered them freely. Why SHS in particular a matter for the manifesto?
First of all, if all this brouhaha had not arisen, maybe the discourse would have taken a different turn. Maybe. But the fact that I am sitting in here as campaign manager and looking at the various twists and turns and spins people are trying to put on this, and I'm saying that, look, the most appropriate thing to do is to wait and give full disclosure of information as we launch the manifesto. That doesn't mean we will not talk about the ideas in the manifesto. No, we will. But when it comes to pinning down details, there's a time and place for it. And that is the difference I want people to appreciate.
Mr. Boache Jackson, I have to thank you for your time with us tonight. We have to leave it there. I look forward to doing a face-to-face interview with you sometime. I'm sure it will happen before the December elections, so we get an opportunity to talk about it differently. But definitely thank you for your time with us this evening. There will be a lot of messages. We'll start reading them. I hope you'll have a way of monitoring them. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
My pleasure.
All right, so we come right back to the studio right now, but of course we have truckloads of text messages on the matter, as one would expect. And my guest in the studio will have to forgive me. Kofi says, I don't know if the NPP understands the word free. They should explain it to Ghanaians and stop debating. Sam says, is NPP also going to make basic education free? And did they ask how much government is currently spending on secondary education? All right, that's Sam's question. This one doesn't have a name. It says, how can Addo make SHS free when he does not even know the number of students we have? Prof is the best man. All right, the next message says, I want the NPP to explain the word free because I am confused. Sarkodia says, Addo has proven to be an astute politician and a good leader who believes in wealth creation through job creation, not lies and mere rhetorics. Atipo, please, what was their budget deficit before they left office? Free SHS is another way of perpetuating corruption. We cannot afford it. KK, let me make this clear to Nana Akufo-Addo. He's dreaming, but he doesn't seem to know that. Hiatepe Christian Young, Nana is a perfect definition. Well, I think this sounds a bit insulting, so I'll edit it. But you're saying that he's an honorable man, but he's quite not sure about what he's saying. And then, what do you talk about? Okay, I will skip it. I won't even edit it because I don't think that you deserve editing. Some of the words you've used here I condemn this all the time, and so I will not give you the opportunity. And I've mentioned your name already here, Atepe. If you send me such messages, I'll read them. Jerry McJustin Benjamin says, yes, I hope the NPP can do that. I mean, making the SHS education free. And this will surely help boost the educational level of all Ghanaians. Look, Ghana has the money, just that some individuals have sat on it. The money we give to Wyoming can do much better. Ghanaians must think twice. Abdullah Mohammed Awal says, I witnessed the interview of Addo on BBC and the same question of practicability of his free SHS policy, and now what Imani is posing, same questions were put to him. What Ghanaians need is Addo and his NPP to tell us how they intend funding it. Ghanaians are now more discerning and would not take things based on their face value without analyzing it first. That's Abdullah. Eric Metz Owari, with God all things are possible, so Addo can do it. Robert Entry, if they were able to apply for a national health scheme, why not? It's possible. Apply? Okay. I think we all know what you mean, Robert Entry. We'll move on to the next message right now, if it will roll. Michael Peu, it says, we are too mature for this type of politics. They lie that they can do something, but when you vote them into power, they lie that the previous government left a bad economy for them. And that's the reason it will take time. He says, I don't believe Nana Akufo-Addo. Richmond Sunkwa, I think we should give Addo the chance to prove to us what he has for Ghana. The free education, even if he can take care of the feeding only for each SHS student, I think would be a great achievement, more than giving 51 million Ghana cedis to one person. Okay. Emmanuel Apiakubi, free education was there in the 60s and 70s. So what exactly is the noise about? Webster Felix Scarface, what about jobs? After free education, what next for the graduates? It can never be true. Emmanuel Kofi Apia, what's the meaning of free? To me, free education means getting everything you need to educate yourself absolutely free, including boarding fees, feeding fees, books, etc. So what does Nana Akufo-Addo mean by free? That's Emmanuel's message. Many more messages. But ADP, he says, one person who believes in Ghana and himself, very bold, upright, and confident, he can do it. Let's just hand over the mantle to him. Nana all the way. All right. Inusa Lassan says, I think Nana does not know what he's saying. He should rather say free school fees, because even those in developed countries will not be able to afford that. Okay, so people are asking about the scope of the free. For them, if it's school fees, let us know. But let me go to Kofi for now, Kofi. And we need to be tying this up somehow. Mr. Boachijako took a bit of our time, understandably. We needed to break the issues. And it's always difficult doing a telephone interview, because then cutting in is not quite easy and all that. But let's come down to the issue. And let me ask you, do you think Addo's proposal is feasible?
Well, I will not answer it that way. But then I'll answer it this way. Do I think a free secondary education policy is possible in a developing country like Ghana? I know that some countries in South America have free education. I've seen free education in Argentina and I think in Ecuador. And then but those economies are quite advanced compared to ours.
Free?
Yeah. By free education, by free secondary education, and I'm not speaking for the MPP, but the free secondary education I have witnessed in Southern America is whereby tuition fee is free, textbooks are free, and fee-free secondary education. That's what is free secondary education. So at the basic level, we call it free compulsory universal basic education. The F is not a big F, it's a small f. It means that the free is relative, and it is relative in the sense that it only covers the direct cost of education. It doesn't cover the indirect cost of education. So that is always the understanding of the word free. So the free means fee-free. Now, in our system currently, the difference existing between our system in Ghana and the South American countries that are practicing the free secondary education is that, whereas in their systems, senior high schools are highly deburdenized, we have the opposite. 93% of our schools are either boarding schools or day schools with hostels. You know, only 7% of our schools are all in out day schools. So if you are operating a secondary school system which is heavily burdenized, then you are running a very, very fat budget, and it makes it very difficult for you to make it free on a wholesale basis.
I'm just looking at, because you raised it, I just opened some pages. We are talking about 23 million children in the whole of Latin America between the ages of 4 to 17 are still outside of the formal education system. And talking about a whole lot of things. And so I'm wondering how the free thing you're talking about works. Because these people cannot even access it. Payment is difficult. Coverage is supposed to be universal, and yet there's a need to incorporate 5 million children even in the primary educational system. They live in remote areas, they are indigenous or Afro-descendants, and live in extreme poverty.
That's the point I was making, that even in those countries, you understand, it is not entirely free, and they haven't attained 100% enrollment in secondary schools. In Ghana, we have been practicing free compulsory universal basic education since 2005. Am I lying? As we speak now, 12% of our children are out of school at the basic school level. Only 50% of teachers are trained in the primary schools. These are all indicators that border on scarcity of resources to a higher extent, even though there are other factors. So it tells you that we've had free education since 2005 at the basic level. But the quality of the education we've been able to produce has been quite questionable, and the access is still not complete. 40% of children are not in cages. You understand? So even though it's free, so immediately it becomes free, I mean, it doesn't mean that everybody can easily access it.
Frankly, really, I mean, it's quite an interesting issue that we are discussing. But perhaps I'll just throw that same question. Emmanuel's view is quite known. You've explained a bit to us what you're talking about and all that. But question of feasibility, irrespective of how much it will cost and all of that, is this something we can do?
Well, thank you very much. Let me first start off by saying that I think that we need to congratulate the spokespersons of the MPP for at least making the attempt without insulting people, that they are explaining this thing. I can imagine if these were asked of the ruling government, a number of insults would have been rained on people. But that's just an aside. Well, they wouldn't. But you see, but the follow-up comment to make is that if we had had sufficient grilling of party people or presidential candidates before we have the current scheme of things, some of the failures we've seen wouldn't have happened. So this exercise is very good, and I think the MPP should take it in good stead. The substantive question you've posed is really, really at my heart, at the heart of the matter. Because you see, when you listen to both parties, both NDC and MPP, all they keep telling us is that we are building the prosperity. The word prosperity features prominently in the manifestos and whatever, the comments that they make. So it looks as if it's self-defeatist when you say that you are building a prosperous economy. The economy is expanding. People's wealth are being enhanced. Individual wealth creation is the mantra. And at the same time, you're extending freebies. You're becoming a nanny state. You're becoming basically playing patronage politics. It sounds to me that you are not even confident that the people that you build their own self-confidence economically can take care of their own selves. I think that really answers the question about the feasibility. So the point is, it is contradictory. The other point to make is that, well, look, some people will be willing to pay anyway. I think one of the best ways to look at this is to say that, look, those who already have the means to pay should pay, because it's going to be probably difficult to do a means testing to tell us who really should be able to pay. People say it's difficult to identify. I think that it's possible to do a means testing to determine who can pay and who cannot pay.
So it's based on need?
So it's based on need.
Okay.
So when you do that, it helps you. I think finally too, I think what I would probably advise the NPP probably to say, or should have been saying, is that look, there's already some amount of money that government pays up already, $215 per SHS student. Now, the average Ghanaian, according to the Ghana Living Standard Survey, pays almost $275 per household. Now, it is important to ask, or it's important for them to tell us what proportion of the household income spent on each SHS student would be absorbed. Because when you do that, it is still free. But when you say free, then you're actually saying that as secondary education or basic education now terminates at the SHS level, what it means is that it's going to be free. And as my good friend here has put out already, you're not even talking capital expenditure, you know, which is a very important issue that came up during the BBC debate. That how are you going to take care of the enrollment figures that were ballooned? There's 32%. We assume that at the 4-year period, it's going to be about 66%. Now, how are you going to take care of all of those? I think probably that's what Mr. Jacko is talking about, the possible scenarios. But it is important that these scenarios should have all been played out before we got Professor Jamba.
That was the question I was going to ask you. Are we at the stage of scenarios?
Well,
if this has been promised since 2008, we are in 2012, it's an election year. In the 4-year period, frankly, is it a good answer to say that we are still playing out scenarios?
We are possibly playing out scenarios because the NDC themselves have said they are now going to start on community SHS level.
Yes.
Something contradictory.
But the NDC could also be wrong. I mean, both of them could be wrong.
That's
the question is that are both of them telling us the right thing?
Actually not. Because
that's my question.
I'm not too sure. And even this first scenario, confidently supported by Mr. Jacko, is that 150 million being put out, and not on the spot at the moment, because Professor Jambafo is a professor of economics. And so even if he put out 150 and says that it's a peak at 400 million, it presupposes that he's done some basic algorithm. And by going on that path, that is how come we decided to critique this single scenario. So he's right to say that, oh, all of a sudden everybody seems to be talking, but this is the first scenario. We hope that the other scenarios will come, and then we can interrogate them further.
Kofi, is it true that your outfit is also putting out its own costing?
Yeah, we started the costing about 2 months ago.
Minutes for me, because really that's all we have.
We started the costing about 2 months ago, and then we were limited or constrained in terms of the scenarios, as you mentioned, because there are a lot of strategies. One strategy is where you focus on rural areas, and then we have about 43 to 50 deprived districts focus in those areas, and then we leave the urban areas. One strategy is to deburdenize secondary education and then focus on the day school, which is cheaper. There's another scenario where you create an SHS in every junior high school.
How practical are some of these scenarios? For example, saying that all the schools, Presec, Infansipim, and whatever, Palm Secondary, whatever, everybody go home.
Yeah, in the short.
What are you going to use the strategy?
Yeah, all these scenarios, it require a paradigm shift, and they are not feasible in the short term.
But what about Ghana? In a particular situation, can we close all these schools and say everybody should go home and become a day student?
No.
Do we even have the rules to take care of people going to school in the morning?
It's not possible. And there's one cross-cutting thing in this scenario. You see, currently we have about 663,000 children in our senior high schools. If you open it and make it free, then all who write the BC will end up in SHS 1. And you are talking about 450,000 people every year. So from grade 1 to from SS1 to SS4, you have about 1.4 million. You understand? And whether they are day students or boarders, it's going to be more than doubling their secondary education expenditure.
I'm just picturing 450,000 people going to school every morning.
And don't forget that, the education sector's budget...
How do they get there? Because when even primary school students are on holiday, Spintex route becomes free. Everybody realizes that they can afford to leave home at 6. On other occasions, you have to leave at 5. But frankly, we have to go.
I think we need to interrogate this further, and I'm happy that there will be other platforms to do this. And this should not stop with just the MPP, because we've heard other things.
Absolutely.
And I told you about that story where in 2008 someone said that his agricultural policy would be to grow donkeys in the north and use the droppings to fertilize the land. You know,
I remember you telling me that.
You'll be sure there will be more of those.
Interesting.
And it is very important that you, being obviously in charge, should interrogate this further.
We really must. Ernest Bilikpe, yes, he says, these politicians pay good money for their children's education in and out of Ghana. Why do they want to make public education porous? The poor are poor and the rich are rich. I know there are many more messages. Somehow my system won't allow me to scroll and read anymore. We have to be going. But I want all of us to think about one thing. It seems that perhaps the best interview that has featured a Ghanaian politician has been done by a foreigner. I don't know what you think about it, but Saka's interview was firm, it was strict, he asked good questions. It would be great to see how it will go with Professor Mills as well, but it will be even better if we down here, all of us who are in this business, can really ask these hard questions of our people down here. I think that's the best way to go. There's too much softness when we come to deal with this matter. We have to take the issues and we have to do research. Mr. Saka doesn't live here with us, but his information was solid, and that's how he was able to do that good interview. Let's challenge ourselves about all of this. Let's ask the questions this year. It's quite important. Special thanks to Mr. Boachie Jaco, NPP Campaign Manager 2012, for joining us by telephone. Mr. Franklin Kujo, Executive Director of Imani, and Kofi Asare, who is also Executive Director, Action for Rural Education. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sending us your message.